Hey, Steve Gamache here with another Chef Knives to Go quick look product review. We are checking out the Yahiko Shidogami or white number 2 hammered Gyuto 180mm knife. So this line of knives uses a 3-layer construction. So you've got a softer stainless steel cladding on either side of the harder core steel. The harder core steel is Shidogami or white paper number 2, reactive high carbon steel. Heat treat, whoops, little typo there. Heat treats around 62, 63 Rockwell. The construction has that stainless cladding on either side of the core steel. It does not extend over the top or wrap over the top of the spine. So it is the core steel, the layering is exposed on the spine, and so you'll have to keep that dry as well and be a little careful with that. You should really dry a knife entirely before you put it away anyway, but just make you aware you not only have the core steel at the edge to worry about, but you also make sure you are aware it's peeking through on the spine as well. Just a little FYI. This cladding does have a hammered finish to it. You can see some large hammer marks, and it also has a black or a kudauchi, or what's known as a KU finish, protective finish on it that is ground away with the thinning of the knife towards the edge. That's called the blade road, or the primary section where you grind it down towards the cutting edge of the blade. The weights and dimensions are going to vary just a little bit from knife to knife on these. So this particular one is 124 grams or 4.3 ounces. It is around 185 millimeters on the actual edge from the tip all the way down to the back of the heel, known as the chin. Overall length is about 325 millimeters. The spine thickness coming out of the handle above the chin is about 3 millimeters on this particular one, and then it goes down to around 2. And you can see not a lot of taper after that. It doesn't thin out too much until the very tip, which you can see gets pretty thin right at the tip, and that's due to the grind. So the grind of the knife, where it's coming down to the cutting edge, kicks in, and that's where it thins out. The blade height is 42.5. Not very tall, but you've got a fairly narrow neck here, and the handle's not that large either, diameter-wise. So you can see that you still get pretty darn good clearance here for a cutting board. This is not going to make you feel too cramped unless you have really big hands or big fingers. The handle is nothing fancy, but it's a well-executed octagonal ambidextrous oak with a buffalo horn ferrule. It's got a nice look to it. You've got a little bit of a step here between the wood and the ferrule. Nothing objectionable, but you can feel it. These sometimes can have some gaps on the tang install, so you might want to put some kind of sealer in there so you don't get any moisture back there. The handle's fairly light, which is kind of good because that brings the balance point to a reasonable spot given the kind of thinner blade. So the blade's pretty light. So you can see that's where our balance point is. It's a little bit behind a pinch grip, so it's super nimble type of light feel on this thing. These are nice looking blades. They're well executed. So there's our beauty shot. So you've got hand-chiseled kanji on the right side of the blade as you're holding it. You've got the hammer marks in there, nice big dimples on there. You can see the kind of kasumi finish, sanded finish on the grind or the blade road, and then there's the core steel peeking out from that cladding. The left side of the blade, as you would be holding it, is there's no kanji or anything there. And you can see that core steel peeking out from the edge, and then you've got the actual edge bevel there shining out. So fit and finish, they've done some nice relief on the choil and a little bit on the spine. It's a little bit rustic back on this section of the knife, a little bit more refined towards the front of the knife, but this has a lot of character, a lot of blacksmith work. You can tell went into this, so it's got a lot of that nice hand-hammered character to it. The grinds are done really well. They're consistent. These knives are straight. Quite thin at the edge, although you'll see the grind doesn't come up very tall. So what that means is you go pretty quickly from that real thin at the edge grind to the thickness of the knife blade. And so you've got some pretty abrupt shoulders here on that transition. What that does for you is it'll give you great food separation, give you great product release on cutting stuff, especially with the hammered texture helps too. You might notice it might wedge a little bit in some harder stuff and some of the harder type denser product, but a little bit of a trade-off there. Food separation can be pretty awesome, so it just depends where your priorities are. Let's take a look at this thing on the cutting board. I'd say this thing was a good 6/ maybe 7 out of 10 on my scale. It's really quite sharp out of the box. All 4 of these knives, I've got 4 different ones here, were really sharp out of the box. Although it is Shirogami, you can get it really sharp. So here's the profile. They give you a little bit of a flat spot towards the heel, and it flows into that nicely. It doesn't just smash or slam into it. It's gentle, and it does flow into that stop, not too abrupt, not too jarring. The tip is a little bit higher, definitely, than on the Santoku, so you'll get right in there before we start kind of wanting to dig the tip in. So definitely, this will rock pretty nicely. And then you've got a pretty gentle belly, so really good for a lot of different techniques. So it's a fairly stiff blade, very flat. All 4 of these were really, shouldn't say flat, very straight on the top and bottom, so nicely crafted. So it's a neat line of knives. So this is the Yahiko Shirogami No. 2 hammered Gyuto 1 80mm knife.